Today we're taping in 3 simple stages. We're gonna have our bed coat, our fill coat, and our finish coat. I'm gonna share some specialty tools and industry tips to help all you DIYers get out of those tricky situations you're gonna run into. Let's get into it. Okay, so step 1 when you're doing your drywall, it's called the pre-fill, all right? And that's what all of your damage and stuff is. This is when we're gonna use some industry secrets. First industry secret is great stuff, spray foam. What we're looking for here is one of 2 things. You either have broken corners, so like over here, I got an area that's a little nasty. We're gonna just clean out all the extra debris. So here we go, we're gonna foam, and we're just gonna give it a little bit of backer. And the idea here is to create a backer that you can then put your mud into. All right, we're just gonna let that set up. That is one technique that you can use, all right? So I've got this area here to fill. I've got this area here where there's a damaged corner, but there's backing in behind it. And so I don't necessarily need to use foam there. So I'm gonna show you the other technique, and that is hardener mud, some 45-minute compound. We're gonna use that to fill all the rest of the gaps and cracks. But this is money in the bank. You can run around the entire job, hit all your gaps at your ceiling, your gaps where you have little inconsistencies like this, and it'll save you a lot of frustration when it goes to taping, because once that's set up, I can actually trim it back and tape right over top of it. All right, guys, next step for pre-fill is we're going to be mixing up some sheetrock 45. Basically, this is drywall compound in powder form that you add water to. The idea here is the 45 is the number that relates to how much time you have to work with it once you mix it in most conditions. Temperature and how much minerals is in your water will affect the setting time. This is a chemical reaction. So be careful on a hot day if it's nice and dry and you have well water, because you will not have 45 minutes, you'll have much, much less. Now, we're gonna keep that blade sunk into the bottom of that in water so that it doesn't go hard on the blade. We'll just take it out with our 4-inch knife here, get some on our hock. Now we're ready to start work. We're looking to pre-fill. Any of these gaps? What we do when we pre-fill is we're reducing the places where we're gonna run into problems when you tape later, okay? So, problems you have are, if there's a huge hole, and then you add drywall that shrinks, then everything that's with it shrinks as well. If you fill it with a compound that doesn't shrink, you're in much better shape. You can do gaps along your ceiling by doing that. When you're working, have a screwdriver in your back pocket. Every time you run into a screw that isn't set the right depth, which is gonna happen as a homeowner, guys, even if you use the dimpler bit. If your screws don't go perfectly perpendicular into the wall, there's always a head raised. Here's a corner, that's a problem, okay? Whenever you have a broken corner, finish breaking it out. Don't leave a broken corner there. Come back with your mud. It's where we're gonna be taping anyway, and do a pre-fill, okay? There we go. All these screws that are in the field of the board. This is called the field of the board. It's in the middle. It's nowhere where there's a joint. Here we have a screw that missed in the original installation. Notice on the back of the 4-inch knife, it's metal, okay? We're just gonna round it out, make it like a bowl. Now it can be filled. Okay, you fill it with the hardening compound, it'll stay relatively flush. That way you don't have to do 2, 3, 4, 5 coats, okay? And or you can just run it off the side of your knife. Now that whole sheet is now prepped for taping. See this? If I pass over with the knife and it makes no noise, we're good. If the screw is raised, you get a clicking noise. Any of the screws that are around the tape, either horizontal or vertical, we don't have to pre-fill, okay? Screws are at the bottom, they're gonna all be covered by your baseboard trim. Same rule around windows and doorways. If the screw is within 2 inches of the edge, you don't have to pre-fill that either. One more thing you're gonna need to know, this brown paper in truth is actually about 2 or 3 layers of brown paper. And sometimes it gets exposed, you get a broken corner, you tear it off, and you see the brown. So, I want you to take this can, Kills. It's an oil-based primer sealer. Give it a shake, because the ball's in there, making it work. And you're just gonna prime that until it's white. This will prime that drywall paper so that it won't bubble when you add moisture. We are gonna take a whole whack of this blue mud. This is actually kind of fun. Now with drywall, you can see that there's a gap in behind that, okay? This drywall is 1/2 inch, and about here, it tapers, it goes thinner. And then it goes back up to 1/2 inch again. So there's like a valley that needs to be filled, okay? All right, now these gaps, they go all the way over into the corner. So until you fill that valley with your first coat of mud and your paper, you can't put a corner in properly because then the corner will come down and go boom, boom at that tape joint, all right? So we always do all the factory edges, tape joints first, and it'll be just simple like this. Just apply the mud. I don't want to see anything on that wall but mud. If you see anything behind it, you cover it up. If you take your mud and you hold it on an angle while you're running it off, it won't make as much of a mess, okay? It's kind of like snow plowing it. Now we're going to go right over top of our hardener because it's almost hard already. And there's no rule in drywall that says you can't put fresh mud over hardener. You don't want to put fresh mud over other regular compound. All-purpose compound, wet on wet, does not work. But over hardener, you're fine. All right, now, tape comes with a pre-made seam on it, that's where it bends naturally. And that's where your inside corner is, okay? So identify the outside of that bend, and you put that towards the wall. You don't want to have a ridge sticking out of your paper tape, okay? Here we go, and we're setting it ever so gently. We're going to just stretch it out with our thumbs, and then gently press it in. Okay, that's it. Gently press it in. You want it to go nice and straight. And once we get it pressed in, then we'll come back and finish the bedding process. There we go. Now that we've got that done, I'm going to use my hawk, hold it against my tape to create some pressure, and I'm going to pull it away from the hawk. I'm going to basically flatten that tape in there and squeeze out extra mud. Okay? So we're going to go in 5 degrees, and you see the blade is sitting just past the middle. Gentle pressure, and all that extra mud will be squeezed out at the top of the tape line onto your knife. Manage your hawk as you go, always moving it to the middle. We'll do the bottom, and then we'll do the top. We now have to make sure that the tape got wet. All right, so we're just taking a little bit of mud and we're making the surface wet. Now this is dry tape, that's wet tape. Now you'll notice there's not a lot of mud there. Okay? Put it on, take it off. And the reason we're doing this hydrates the tape and it'll help it bond. And it'll avoid you getting air bubbles. So here is our 45-minute patch, nice and hard, ready to go. This is where things get a little bit dicey, all right? Take the same skills, but now we're working with gravity against us. So we want to not use as much mud, okay? And you want to have your hawk underneath you. You see how that's going to make a mess? You can catch all that mud, okay? And if you're worried about a spot, just go back and pick it up. We're going to put where it belongs here. I'm going to use the tip of my hawk to hold it steady, stretch it out, and gentle into the corner. All right. And I can just let it hang there off the ceiling. And I can go back and press it in, and press it in, and then hydrate it, and then clean it. Now we're going to pull this over under tension and press that in a little bit, and we'll bed it. Clean out the extra mud, and then we'll hydrate that area. Okay, here we go. Now, that's how we tape a ceiling. Now we're going to move on to the second joint, which is going to be the inside corners. You can just throw a dollop of mud there, set your paper in it, walk away. It's a great way to have it handy. There's two sides here. The ceiling went on first in this case, and then the wall second, so there's a gap. It goes above the wall panel, all right? And when you're working, if you work this side, the drywall keeps the knife from sliding into that gap. But when you work this side, your knife can slide into that gap. So there's something you need to understand here is which side you want to fill last, okay? You want to fill the top side of that last, and I'll show you why. I put it in on the side of the knife, okay? I'm actually pre-filling that gap. I'm coming back, okay? When I do the sealing, I don't want to be like this with my knife because it'll get stuck in that gap. I want this part about a ½ inch below the corner to be in touch with the drywall. The tip of that knife, it stays away from that gap. If I go square, it goes in the gap and it scoops out the mud. So by having your knife on an angle where the handle's almost touching the wall, it doesn't take the mud out from inside the corner, it just takes it off of the wall. And that's okay. And the better you get with this, the less damage you'll cause to the wall at all. Now, you want to fix it, you can come back and just kind of, whoop. That's going to happen because we're not using much pressure. Okay? Now, if you're new and you're not sure what's going on here, you're like, oh, I can see a bit of drywall here, I can see a bit of drywall here. Oh, I just hit the ceiling, I got to touch up, fix up. Instead, use less pressure, leave more mud, and then we'll show you. When you stick this in, just put the folded corner in the corner. Okay? You got to trust your process as you're cleaning that mud out. Now, our paper's in there nice and square. We're going to set our knife, and we're going to clean out the mud from in behind. And if you have it on a bit of an angle, the bottom towards away from you like this, you're pushing the mud up into the corner. All right? And so then all that mud that you thought wasn't going to make it into that little gap is now squeezed in there. So, same thing, right near the wall on a 5-degree angle. Again, because we're pulling forward on this corner, the back corner is where the mud ends up. So we're pushing it into that inside joint. Now, if you're not sure if you got good coverage, have a look, check your process out. All right, that's pretty darn good coverage. Now, same thing, we want to hydrate this. Now the tape on the bottom side is hydrated, the tape on the top is dry. But what we're going to do is instead of hydrating it and taking it off, we're going to apply the mud to the depth of the 4-inch knife, and we're going to leave it there. And we're going to put a little bit of pressure on this corner tip when we do this. So we get a nice clean edge. And then we'll go back and clean that off. All right, there we go. Now, here comes, always go from where it isn't finished towards what's finished. Now we're going to put the mud on. Oop. Okay, out the trough, put all the extra mud out of the way. Okay, we're going to go with pressure on the outside and lay that in to a 4-inch bead. And then we're going to clean off the edge on the outside. All right, and that is my first corner. I'm not happy here. So I'm going to get the mud to the bottom of my knife, put a little extra in there, and then come back with one more pull and make it so that I'm incredibly happy. I want this to be as smooth as possible. All right, and we're going to go like that all the way down because I'm trying to use pressure on the knife on the where the wall meets the tape, right here on that corner. Okay? So I'm not going in flat. I'm trying to adjust pressure. And then I'm trying to use pressure going the other way. And I inevitably will get this line. Okay? You're not going to get the corner perfect on the first coat. All right? The only place you want it perfect on the first coat is after the first 4 inches. So what we do here in this corner is we build it up just a little extra. Okay? And then we just try to feather it in. Gentle. Here's the trick. Your knife is flat to the ceiling. And then there's a little bit too much mud, so we'll just pull it all out till there's no bubbles. And we'll go as flat to the ceiling as we can. There we are. Ready? Bam. And now it's almost gone. All right. Oh, that's about as good as we're going to get on the first attempt. Okay, now the second coat will get even closer. Because of the second coat, we're stretching it out more, and there's not as much scalloping or scooping, and we're using less mud just over a wider space. This is where we have our foam backer. We want to start on the side where the gap is. Obviously, the foam here has done a really good job of creating a backer. This is the part of the job where it's okay to use more than you need. Stop a couple inches from the ground here. On an angle, we're going to snow plow the extra mud out. Hydrate. We are going to do the one side wet, the other side first coat. Has a nice little run. There we go. That's an inside corner. First coat. Now let's jump on our butt joints. Now the butt joint is a pain in the butt because it is exactly 1/2 inch drywall meeting up with exactly 1/2 inch drywall. There is no gap, okay? There's no light coming through. It's exactly flat. So everything we do here is raising off the wall. One of the reasons why you have to consider where that joint goes when you're installing your drywall. Try to have it as far away from any other issues as possible. This is actually a little bit too close for my comfort, but because I'm hanging a 45-foot square TV, I don't really care. But here we go. We're gonna go from the paper edge down, okay, to the paper edge up. We're not overlapping the paper, all right, because that makes it even thicker. So our paper that we're putting on is going to go from an existing edge to an existing edge, all right? That's the secret. Same rule applies. You want to have this square. You want to know where the fold is. The fold goes towards the back. We come up here, find out where that crack is. That's where your fold goes, right up to the old paper. Bring it down. And then we're going to cut this a little bit shy. This drywall is screwed to the same stud. So there is no expansion and contraction on that stud vertically. This joint does not need to overlap the other piece of paper. You will never get a crack here. If you add that paper on top of this paper, now you're creating a hump. Now the thickness that you've got to cover is even greater, and you're going to have to stretch it out as far as you can reach. That's a lot of work, guys. The butt joint is where less is more. We want to have as little mud behind that paper as we can get away with. If you're not sure if you've done a good job, please just double check. Oh, what happened here? We had some kind of a cruddy on there. That might have turned into a bubble. All right. But if you're happy with your performance, go there, hydrate the tape. Okay, all you're doing when you're adding moisture is adding something that's going to dry and leave. It's not going to create a mountain, right? Here we are. Your butt joint, less is more. Okay, that's finished. Let that dry like this. It's day two. Day two, we start off with our corners, our outside corners, all right? First, and I'm going to recommend, always use the metal corners if you're new to drywall. 87. When you're measuring your corner, always stop about a 1/2 inch or inch from the top. Doesn't make any sense to go floor to ceiling, okay? We always leave the gap at the bottom. We push the metal close to the ceiling. That's it. Now this is the cut end, okay? So we're going to bring the factory edge towards the ceiling, all right? What we're going to use today is hammer and nails. There's my drywall now. Look how flat the top of that nail is and how thin it is. This is designed to not create any ridges. Now, these corner beads have a bunch of holes, and they have these series of little tiny holes on the outside. That is where the fastener goes. All these other holes are designed to have the drywall compound in there to bond to the paper that's behind it, and it creates kind of a lath and plaster effect, okay? First of all, you've got a paper side of the corner and an exposed side of the corner, okay? You want to make sure that this is all cleaned up. Use a knife, use whatever, make sure there's not any bumps sticking out. Now, we push it right up to the ceiling. Don't worry about the floor, it'll be off the ground. what we're gonna do is we're gonna stand here right off the 45 and we're gonna set that right in there nice and tight, okay? Without squeezing down in the corner, all right? We're gonna just set our nail in the little hole and we're just gonna go to flush. We're not gonna pound it in. We don't wanna be denting the metal. It'll cause everything to twist and get wavy. Right across the side here, there's gonna be another hole on the other side. Okay, we're gonna get that one in. Now, this is where the trick is, okay? You take your knife, and what you're doing is you're making sure that from this edge right here, this outside corner, to the paper leaves a gap. All right? Now, on the short side, it won't really matter that much because this side will also have a bump. We have the metal, and then we have this hump, okay? So we are actually filling from the hump to the paper. As long as we've got a little bit of a gap, a little bit of air shining through, we know we're fine, all right? We check this side, good gap there. This side, there's a good gap there. Now we're ready to like secure these final. Okay, now it's time to sink them in a little bit. Not too crazy, just nice and gentle like, a little bit of a dimple, so we aren't touching the head. Now we have something to fill, okay? That's very important because we want to be able to fill this with something. You don't have to put a nail in every one of these holes, okay? Every other is fine. It's like anything else, every 16 inches is perfectly acceptable. By the time you get 3 sets of nails in, you're gonna be pretty square. I'm gonna go down to the bottom now and make sure that I'm not rolled over somewhere here. Don't put nails within the last 4 inches. Don't put nails below the top of the baseboard because when you go to install that, you will be using a gun, a brad nailer, and the brad nailer will penetrate the corner, but it won't penetrate the head of the nail, okay? So you can avoid problems by keeping your nails higher than your baseboard. Now I know a lot of guys that like to put their corners on day one, but we don't want to do that, and here's why. If your nail is where your first tape joint is, remember that drywall, it goes up and then it bevels in. Then when you hammer on your corner bead, if you haven't done the taping and let it dry first, then you're going to warp the bead. Take our 4-inch, check for nails. If you hear the clicking sound, you got to sink your nail in deeper. Oh, see? Good to go. And then it's the same thing with the other side. Here is my 45-minute hardener. Guys, this is Canadian Gypsum Company. If you live down in the United States, it's going to be USG, and it'll say Easy Sand 45. Okay, just so we get that clear. Basic concept when you're learning how to mix with this stuff, the more experience you have, the better you are at it, getting the ratio right. But I like to think of it out of the gate, 1 part water, 2 parts powder. All right. Now, generally this stuff mixes like pancake batter, and if you got that experience, you'll understand. Oh, me, Joe. Well, that was exciting. That's the first flood we've had on this job in the last 1.5 years, which is still a pain in the butt, but now note, this is regular regular 45 compound. It's a filler, it's gonna have bubbles, it's not gonna look perfect, it's not designed to be creamy smooth, it's designed to fill these gaps without shrinking, okay? That's why we use it. It's also much harder than regular mud when it dries to fill. There we go. Here we are. This was put on about 20 minutes ago. It's already hard. Yeah, that is really red. All right, all right. Okay, guys, so here we go. Day 2 mud. We're gonna go with something that's a little bit thinner here, okay? Okay, so what we're gonna do is first I'm gonna start on my ceiling. I have 2 types of joints. This is a butt joint, all the way down there. And the reason we put it all the way down on one side is to get as far away from that window as possible, so it won't be noticeable. So this, on second day, you wanna come along with your knife, a good chunk of mud on there, and you wanna stretch that out on one side of that joint and then on the other side of that joint. Okay, here we go. On today, we want to pressure on the outside corner so it's nice and flat. See, I'm only cleaning on one side of the knife. Show this again. Pressure on the one side. Okay, all right? And then we're going to come right down the middle. So let me just get that a little bit more consistent. There, that's better. And then we're going to come right down the middle with a bit of pressure. All right? When you do that, you're going to get this ridge. And you're going to probably get a ridge over here too. It all depends on the shape of the ceiling and whatever. The ridge is not something you want to touch. We'll show you on day 3 what we do with this ridge, but for now, we just want to apply the mud and then run right down the middle and leave the ridge, okay? And the more mud you put on the ceiling at this point, or on these joints, the wider you got to go. So having it a little thinner helps you reduce your amount of work, okay? So here we go. Now we're always going to work from new to old. Okay. Okay, I don't want to have it all streaky on you because then you can't see what the heck is going on, guys. Here we go. Okay. I'm happy with that. Now, we'll go with the pressure. Okay. Pressure over here. Hardly got anything off there. Now we'll go down the middle. Okay. Yeah, that's nicer. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to take care of our inside corners. I'm right-handed. I want the left side of all these corners with 2 coats, nice and clean and pulled tight, close the gaps. It makes it for a really straight edge, and it makes it easy for me to work with the backhand in the opposite corner later. And then we're just going to pull it all nice and tight to close the gap on the right side. And that ridge will collapse. There we go. Now that side is done. We'll do the same thing with the ceilings. Anywhere where we have the first coat, we'll come back with the second coat. Pull that nice and tight. Need a little bit of material there, need a little material there. So, first we clean out the edge. Okay, then we clean down the outside. And we come right down the middle. Closing that gap, getting a nice square edge. There we go. Okay, now we're looking for areas where we didn't have enough mud. There's a hole there, there's a hole there. Okay, so we're gonna come down a little tighter this time. There we go. Yeah, I'm loving that. So when you have ridges, don't try to mess with that right now, because these ridges are basically saying, hey, there's more mud here than I need, but if you swipe them down, now you're gonna be less than you need. And you want to leave the mud on the ceiling. Let it dry, we'll get rid of the ridges, and then we'll do another coat with an even wider knife. You'll be able to see how that finishes up when we go to the green. Nice and hard. If you got a whole day and you do all your outside corners first, you'll find usually by lunch they're done. They're good and set. Great time to just get rid of the extra mud, okay? Keep all this as clean as you can, because every time you pass by here, you're gonna pick up the crumbs and it's gonna end up in your new coat of mud. Okay, now, we're gonna take our 6-inch now, and we're just gonna go by and clean up anything that's raised, even these little wrinkles, okay? You're gonna want them gone, or they're gonna stick through the next coat, all right? So anything that's a bump is your enemy here. You wanna do both sides, and then come up on a 45 across that outside corner. Okay, here we are. Start close to the ceiling for now. Okay. And we're not using an insane amount of mud here. Just enough to get a nice solid coat over top. We're gonna put on more than we need, and then we're gonna clean off our excess. That's basically drywall mud in a nutshell. It's kind of like Karate Kid, right? Wax on, wax off. You apply it and then you remove it. And you're gonna see a little bit of the old 45 sticking through, and that's okay. This coat is on these outside corners is not supposed to be thick and heavy. is just supposed to be there to fill up from the metal to the length of a trowel, okay? So it's day 3. Before we put any mud on the wall, other than our corner beads, we want to make sure that we are prepping this surface that we previously worked on. So we want to get rid of any extra ridges, especially where we're planning on adding new mud today, okay? So right here, there's a great example of a space that got a little bit too much mud. Nice. I've also got a contrary ridge on this patch. A lot of this is still in the drying process, so it's a perfect time to get in here with a knife because it's still somewhat easy to manipulate. If you ever worked with Bondo, while it's setting up is a great time. Or if you worked with plastic wood, while it's setting up, it's a great time to manipulate it and tool it. All right, area's prepped. I am happy. Time to mud. We're gonna put all this on the other inside corner. We'll take a cut. Okay. And you'll notice right away how much easier it is to do this because I'm actually going up against a really nice straight line. All right. And this is why I want to do this side second, because I'm not left-handed. All right. Okay, now we're done with the 4-inch. Time to switch over to the 4x10 and get all of our factory joints. And then that's the end of day 3. Ha! Okay. It's always easier to put more on than you need and then take it off, right? Let's put it on. Let's clean the edge. Let's clean the edge. And then that's just a little bit of pressure. Okay, so this is too much mud. Now look over here. Hardly any imperfections at all. Again, take off the top and the bottom and just use a little bit of pressure to clean up the excess. All right, that was way too much mud. Now it's clean. Clean the top, clean the bottom. That's all I got. I'm not coming square across. I'm coming from like a 5-degree slope. What that does with your extra mud is it's forcing it up, so it doesn't dribble out underneath. There we go. Let's get this side done here. We want to also take care of all of our through holes. All right. Want to be able to fill these. Now, in most cases, you're going to be able to put just a little bit of mud. And you can see, because it's red, you can actually see this. That area is really light, and this is like a half a screw head of fill. This is like an 1/8 of a screw head of fill, okay? Just took a little bit. But the point is, you don't know how much you need until you do it. All right, side of the knife. See that? That was the head of a screw. This is your chance to mitigate almost all of the extra work you're going to do once we're finished with all the mud work. See that line right there? That tells me that the head of that screw's got too much white mud. All right, guys, and this is day 4. Now, our goal today is first we have to prep our surface. Yes, and sanding block. Today we're sanding just for the purpose of getting rid of anything on this wall and ceiling that could be a loose chunk of mud, so that when we're doing our final coat, we don't get scratches. Just take a look over here. There's a scratch line, there's a scratch line, and all it was this one little piece of dirt right there that got introduced in the mud and dragged all the way across. We don't want to have any of that. So we got our sanding sponge. Has a nice little detail on it. We're going to take a look at big chunks. Okay? And then we're going to take our sanding sponge real gently and just go one time through the corner, make sure that there are no chunks. Now it's also going to take off a lot of ridges. And that's cool. It makes it really easy to get the perfect final coat. So don't go in at an angle. You don't want to create a groove. Nice and flat. Just a quick pass. And that's it. The ceiling as well while we're at it. Okay? Just because I don't want the side of my knife when I'm taping here to catch that little chunk. All right? So we also want to introduce our radial sander. Okay, it comes on a sponge pad. The grit on this thing is a 150. Okay. The idea here is we just want to hit that on the ceiling. Again, we're just looking for those chunks. So we're going to gently pass everything that we've mudded. Not looking to sand down the ridges or anything. Okay, we're still in finish mode. But you see all these scratches here? Those are nasty. We don't want to have that happen on our finished coat. And there's a good possibility that the chunk that created that scratch is still sitting in the ceiling, in that mud. All right, so we get rid of those. Bam. Fantastic. We're also going to do all of our wall surfaces, including every single screw hole. Make sure you get those outside corners knocked down really good. That's prepped. Okay, we're not going to create a dust cloud. We don't need to wear a mask. Here we go. Oh yeah, this is okay. This is brand new mud. And on this knife, I've already got my first chunk. That's the enemy. All right, so I'm going to pick apart with my hawk where all the dirt goes. The less times I pull that knife against that wall, the less mud that I'm going to drag out. So the goal is to try to make it perfect on this coat. The reality is, when you come to your prime check, you already know where your problem areas are, all your inside corners. They're always a problem. And a lot of your butt joints and your other joints where you've had to apply lots of mud, those are problem areas. Where your screw holes are problem areas. So when you're doing your prime check, you already know what you're looking for, okay? And it is a lot easier to fix the wall during prime check than it is to do a 4th or 5th or 6th coat. So guys, wow, that's actually quite shocking. You recoat everything in the room with this lovely neon green. Now, we're going to start in the middle, and then we're going to go to the side, and then the other side. But if you had a really big bump, you can stretch it even further. Okay? So we're going to go through reverse order, and then we're going to put the edge of the trowel in the middle, pressure to the middle, try to feather that out so it stays smooth. Here we go. And then we'll go outside with pressure on the outside. Aside from something that ended up being a scratch, it's perfect. Now I'll come back. Okay, and the goal is to try to make this as flat as possible to reduce as much of the sanding as possible. Now I've got it to here, I gotta follow my rule. Always work towards what's finished, but I'm gonna need more mud. And we'll put mud on the, take another cut and go next to it. Another cut and go next to that. Okay, and then fill in your holes. Look for opportunities to not have spaces. And now we clean it off. And this is where we want to use some pressure, balance right in the middle. So you put your hand where the tape is, and you come off the finish. When you do that way, you don't get a line here. That's crucial because you're trying to eliminate the need to sand ridges. And then, with the tip in the middle, pressure on the middle, clean the right side, and then pressure on the outside. And if you don't get your result, just go back. Here we are. And we got a piece of dirt that's scratched all the way through. So we're gonna hit it one more time and get rid of the scratch. Okay. All right, you'll see the theme here is the middle where the tape joint is, we're not really covering with any more thickness. I still see the red coming through, and that's perfect. There's always more repairs to do. So don't waste your time by adding fresh mud once you get your finish coat on. Now it's time to sand when this is dry. So we'll start at the bottom. We're pulling away from the dirt, okay? Set it about 3 inches off. And you get to decide how wide you want to stretch it based on a couple of factors. Factor number 1, how straight was your wood? Is your wall straight? You can throw a straight edge on here and see if it's got a bit of a bend. If it's still bowed, you might want to consider stretching it out more. If not, don't worry about it. So when I'm cleaning this off, I've got pressure on the middle, pressure from the middle again, right? And then that way, and then I clean from the outside. When I'm looking at this, I see this. This is actually almost like a filler here. That's like a filler coat. And then it fades out really nicely. All right? And so I'm not worried about this. I feel like that's stretched out plenty enough. If I don't see any red when I do that, okay, if I don't see that color coming through, I know I haven't stretched out far enough. Remember, our inside corners are officially finished. Okay? And this is a tapered joint, but we just want to start from here. Come into the mud. Okay? Always finish on the finished mud. Pressure. Because it's already filled, this coat now is just there to fill all the scratches and dings, and it's something that can be sanded off back to perfect. Wow, that is really green. I'm intentionally making this joint wider, and I don't really need to. I'm not bending anything. What I'm trying to do is because when I'm cleaning it, I'm using enough pressure that I'm getting just a mist of mud, okay? Pressure on the outside. What I'm doing is from the old red line to here is 0. So I'm using pressure on the outside. There we are. Always finishing on finished mud. Working your way to the finished mud. Sands out without any difficulty at this point. It's a little too much mud there. That's all right. All right, now that looks perfect. Now we're gonna go hit the ceiling now, all the little screw holes. But first I wanna show you something. The speed at which this dries is insane, right? See, I got a ridge here, and I don't want the ridge. So all I do is I take my knife, I hold it flat to the ceiling, and gently come across. And I can knock that ridge down almost as fast as I put it on. It's really easy to do touch-ups. Now here's a scratch. I can take a little bit of mud, put that on, and I can just pack that in. You can do real-time repairs once you've had about 30 minutes of that mud sitting there. So don't be intimidated. You don't have to wait till tomorrow. If you see something you want to fix, that's how you do it. All right, so now we're looking for all of our other spots. We want to make sure everything else has had that attention to detail, okay? We don't want any ridges anywhere, all right? So if I see a ridge, like right here, that was done the other day, that's the inside corner. Well, I don't want a ridge. Ridges take too hard to sand. So I'll just hit that inside corner with my green mud and eliminate that ridge, all right? And there's a hole that wasn't covered. Yeah, this is a good sign. When I pass over with the green mud and there is no green where the screw hole was, that means there was no bump. So this is your chance to make sure that your screws are all perfect. Wow, I missed that one altogether with my red coat. You can tell which one of these screw holes is me. I like to do the one and done pass. Matt likes to do each screw hole one at a time. Okay, there we go. That's my ceiling. Yeah, this will be a good spot. Okay, now, this motion, you can see with the red. I mean, I'm going off the side of the knife, and then I'm gonna flex on this. I'm coming back as tight as I can. I should hardly be leaving any mud on, and I'm just trying to aim for those screw holes. Like, I know that's perfect, right? When it's white on white mud, you can't tell. But here, look at that, just that tiny little bit of green there on that screw. How about that? That was necessary. And I'm catching this before we sand and prime, so I won't have to do a bunch of screw holes later. So I'm gonna start with down here. All right. And instead of stopping at the middle, we're gonna come right up through it. Huge amount of mud on this one. Then we're gonna pull from the bottom all the way through. Okay. We're going to be leaving a little bit extra mud on this one on purpose because we're filling this joint and dealing with this difference in depth as well. But before I go, I want to just soften up my corners. Okay. And until it finishes drying, there's still moisture leaving that surface. But you can see how perfect the next coat is now. This is about as perfect as you're going to get. Loving it, okay? When it comes to your outside corners, there's usually a little bit of a buildup, like a ridge from putting the mud on both sides. If you take the knife at this point and cut that ridge off, you run the risk of taking big chunks, okay? And then that'll be hard to fill with just one coat of mud. So instead of taking the knife and cutting those ridges off, gently grab that sanding block and work it off with the disc, okay? That way you don't run the risk of breaking off the chunks and you get a nice surface to put that mud on. All right, and then run around the other side, especially when you have a doorway, because you're gonna have exposed drywall. We do wanna make sure we're not building up the mud right here, because in most cases, your door jamb is the thickness of the wood and the drywall, not the thickness of wood, drywall, and 3 coats of heavy mud, okay? You'll end up having your trim with huge gaps needing a lot of caulking later, and that is not the goal. There we go. Okay, now we're prepped. We can get the mud. Here we come with our green ice cream. There we are. For this corner, we're going to use a 6-inch knife, okay? And I'm going to intentionally come really shy. I don't want to add any more mud here, okay? There's just no value. This is just about filling up imperfections. And you don't have to put mud where you know you're going to have door casing. Okay? So, okay. There we are. So your system for the outside corner on the large joints should do the outside corner first. Okay, before you go to the rest of the wall, hit your outside. And here's what I'm going to recommend for a lot of you homeowners out there. Okay, we're applying it a little on the liberal side. Oh, it's a little sloppy today. Look at this. All right. Now, I'm going to go a little wider than we normally do. And that is because instead of using this knife to finish off, we pull out the 24-inch blade for this, okay? And here we go. So, okay. And all that extra here, you just use that 6-inch knife and pull it back in. All right? Now that is a nice clean look. It's nice and tight, easy to sand. Now we can do our final coat on our horizontals, always going, finishing towards something that's been finished, overlapping these joints, making sure we have sufficient mud to do the job. Okay, all right, and then we can finish with this 24-inch blade into finished mud. All right, now, if you leave a little bit of a ridge, don't worry about it. That will sand off, not a problem. Just try to make sure you eliminate the scratches. And you'll see here, this whole dent. It's because I started my pass in the middle of the mud, okay? So always finish, start from fresh and finish to old. And that'll eliminate all those dents. All right, there we go. Now you got my system. It's time for me to finish taping the rest of this room. Well, chances are, guys, if you're watching to this point in the video, you've got a major project coming up. I'm going to encourage you, you can do this yourself. I'm here to help with all of our videos. If you have questions about how to renovate a basement, I'm going to suggest that you check out our video series, okay? We got a playlist documenting this entire build. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers.